Welcome to the Maria Heller Show, the internet's original podcast. Since the year 2000, always ahead of the curve, always on your side. A true warrior for truth and justice, Meria and her guests leave nothing out, and no one is off limits. There is only one truth, the rest is lies. Sit back, enjoy the education with a true daughter of Mother Earth. Sharp New York wit, spiritual knowing, and a very dry sense of humor, Meria will dissect the news and lies to make it all palatable. Education is power. Meria delivers rapid-fire truth like no one else can. Here she is, the mouth that roars, the legendary Meria Heller.
Good morning, world. Meria here, alive and kicking. Welcome to The Bigger Picture. And there's a lot going on in the bigger picture, besides the horrific pictures we're getting every day. So I want to say good morning to my co-host, Michael Reccia. If you're not familiar with Michael's work, I've sent so many people to his site. Get over to josephspeaks.com. I have a live link here for that. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Maria. How are you?
Well, I'm on the mend as usual.
Yes.
It's like, if it ain't one, you remember that old song, if it ain't one thing, it's another? And I have to tell you, for the past year and a half, I have gone from one weird thing to the other physically. And every time I get tested or go to a doctor, they tell me everything is perfect. So I have to come to the conclusion that we're under attack. Because, talking to you before the show and, through the past year and a half, it seems you and I have been experiencing the same symptoms on different sides of the world in tandem. I mean, it's crazy because I told you this morning about the problem I was having with my foot, and you told me you're having the same problem.
That's absolutely right. And you also said that as soon as you get rid of one thing, something else takes its place.
Right.
And that's been the case with me for a good few months now.
Well, I've got it down to a year and a half so far. And I'm like, what the hell is this? And I, hadn't shared this with my audience before. But about 3 weeks ago, I just woke up and my foot was totally swollen. The pain was excruciating, couldn't stand on it. Went to the urgent care, went to the doctor. And they tell me it was plantar fasciitis, which I had never heard of. And the doctor's opinion was, just take an anti-inflammatory, which was useless. So I did my YouTube and Google homework and figured out a million ways to alleviate the pain. And here it is a few weeks later, and I've got that pretty much 80% under control, but it's like, what's going on here? I had the foot x-rayed, nothing, no spurs, no nothing to actually cause it. And then this morning you tell me you're having a problem with your feet.
Yes, I think it's a symbolic of, as you said earlier when we were chatting before the show, of moving forwards. And it's something that, if it took a hold, would prevent us from moving forwards. And I think, as we both know, the more you work in this area, the more the field of human consciousness that is set to negative doesn't want you to work in this area. And it may not be a specific attack from a specific person aimed at you. It could be aimed at all light workers, and it manifests itself in the physical, because that's where it originates. It originates in denser matter, in denser thought, and tries to prevent us from what we're doing. But we're not having any of that.
No, listen, I sat here doing my show with my foot in a bucket of ice water.
Oh my goodness.
So I still got it done. It's like I still got it done even with split migraines, because to me,
Yes.
if you give in and you stop, then they got what they wanted.
Absolutely.
And, obviously the darkness is going wild on this planet right now. With threats of war, with nuclear danger, with psychopathic dictators, taking over every country on earth, and especially here in America. Americans attacking Americans, Nazis in the street. I mean, I know this is the darkness's last chance. They know the field is closing. They have no way out. But it does affect us, and it's affecting all of us. And, listen, I'd like to hear from my listeners if they've been experiencing similar physical things.
Yes, yes, and of course we've got to keep on keeping on, as the old adage says. There is more of a need for light at this time than there has been for thousands of years. And we can still, I know it feels as though we can't, but we can still turn things around. But we need to work, each of us, daily. We need to have the attitude that we're bringing light into the world. We need to have the attitude that this is a spiritual planet, and we are re-establishing that light on this planet, and we are re-establishing the true identity of people by sending enough light to them for them to realize who they truly are, and that we're turning things around. And it's work, and it's war. It's light versus darkness, but the light will win if enough of us send that light out on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the thing, and it truly is a war, and people don't get that. You know, I knew many years ago that there was a war ongoing war here for the human soul.
Yes.
And now it's just amped up because they know they're out of time.
Yeah.
So, even when I did post some things yesterday, that as bad as things look, we should be happy because it's almost over.
Yes,
To me, it's like, when's it going to be over, Lord? I was thinking, sitting outside this morning, my Aunt Mary died this year, and she was like 94 years old. And her last words were, "I'm tired." Okay. And she was 94. I mean, that's decades on me, and I can tell you, I sat out there thinking, I understand, I understand that feeling of being tired, and I think it's tired on a soul level.
Yes, yes. But again, we are, by sending out the light, even if we don't turn things around, in the event that we don't turn things around, we're creating the right atmosphere for hundreds, thousands, perhaps millions of souls to realize who they are and to go into the next stage of their existence with the right attitude. One, not wanting to come back.
Right.
And two, realizing that they are more than flesh and blood, and that's hugely important. So I think if some of your listeners have difficulty in maintaining their light sending and in thinking that they're changing things,
right.
Yes, they are still changing things. Even if the entire world doesn't change, there are pockets of resistance, as it were. There are people who are affected by that light. Mm-hmm. There are people who are changed by that light. There are souls that are saved by that light. And so it is essential, despite what the physical world tells us, to keep on keeping on, to keep on sending out the light.
Absolutely. Well, it reminds me of your book, Your Life After Death, which I got to tell you is still one of my all-time favorites. That everything we do here on our own as individuals helps determine where we're allowed or where we're able to go after this. So when I tell people I do what I do, and yes, my audience benefits, but I truly do it for myself. I want to leave here saying I did everything I knew how to do.
Yes, there is a compulsion, isn't there? Once you put your feet on this path, there is a compulsion to do what we're doing. And you can't stop. In conscience, you can't stop. There is so much at stake. And you have to keep going. And the people who are giving out the light, that are listening to this show, please keep going. You are making a difference. And as Maria's just said, you are raising your own vibrations by doing so. You can only harmonize when you go to the spiritual realms with the level that you have attained via your personal vibration. And the amount of light and the amount of love that we put into what we do and that we transmit to other people elevates our vibration. So that we, in effect, as we send out that love, we lift ourselves up, literally, through the spiritual spheres to the sphere at which with which we resonate. We sort of take shortcuts that further our journey back into the spiritual spheres. So it's very important for ourselves and for others to elevate ourselves on a daily basis, because that's exactly what we're doing once we leave here. We will have elevated ourselves to a certain level of understanding and a certain level of existence.
Exactly. Well, I think there's a lot of people here that are going to find themselves in a very weird place after this. And I don't want to be there. I remember one thing that stood out in your book, I don't know why, I just found it just hit me really hard, was where you said if you spent your life as a couch potato, you're going to wake up in a room with a whole lot of other couch potatoes. And who knows how long you'll spend your time there before you realize that's not real.
Yes, you'll continue with your perception of existence. If your perception of existence is the 9 to 5 existence, is the existence with the holiday twice a year and visiting the relatives and acquiring the new car and acquiring the next vacation, that's what you will expect if you haven't investigated spirituality. And so you create what you expect. You can only operate within the level of vibration that you've created around you and within you. And so you will expect those things, and you will be happy with those things for a time, because they are what you're used to. But eventually, you'll run out of patience with them, and you'll have to seek something else. Now, what do you seek if you haven't investigated life after death? If you haven't investigated or acknowledged spirituality, what do you seek? Mm-hmm. And the unfortunate answer is that a lot of us seek to come back here.
Right.
So the life that has been so challenging, so painful, so sorrowful, so depressing for us, is the life that we choose because we haven't investigated or invested time in anything else. That's the life that we choose to come back to.
Right, not because believing you have any options.
That's all we know.
Mm-hmm.
It's all we know. So it's important that we investigate what else exists, that we make up our own minds about it, but that we investigate spirituality. We investigate life after death. We look at the evidence. We investigate from within via meditation to see what is right for us and what is wrong for us. And we prepare ourselves for the next stage. We're not here for long. We're only here for a few years, and it goes very, very quickly. And so inevitably we get to that next step. What are we going to do with that next step? Are we going to move onwards into bliss and into enlightenment, or are we going to come back here for another ride on the merry-go-round?
Like I told you a million times, if I could tattoo on the inside of my eyelids, never come back, I would do it. And when I tell people that, go ahead, I'm sorry.
It should be on gravestones, Meria.
I know.
Every time you visit a cemetery, it is reflected back at you from, 1,000 gravestones.
That's a good idea.
Don't come back. Remember not to come back.
I know. I wish sometimes you were next to me when I'm talking to people and I tell them, don't ever come back. Remember to never come back. And the look on their faces when I tell them that reincarnation is a trap, and how stunned they are.
Yes. And not only is it a trap, but it is a choice. This is what a lot of cultures don't realize, that reincarnation is a choice. Nobody is forcing you to come back here. You bring yourself back here. As we've said in many shows, there is a constant throughout the universe, and that constant is free will. We don't have to do anything we don't want to do. Now, free will can't just operate in the rest of the universe and not where reincarnation is concerned. Reincarnation operates under the same universal, divine, if you like, law. Mm-hmm. So there is free will where reincarnation is concerned. And reincarnation does exist, but it exists because so many of us say, this is what I'm used to, this is what I'm coming back into.
Right.
This is what I want to try again, to get right this time. But you won't get it right.
Right.
Life is not a TV show. There isn't a beginning, a middle, and an end to each life as an adventure here. And we shouldn't expect it to work in that way. Mm-hmm. There isn't a happily ever after, except that we get back to where we came from.
Right.
Except that we get back to our spiritual life and move onwards through the cleansing realms, through the spirit realms, and into infinity.
Right. Kind of makes you wonder whether reincarnation exists on other planets or other universes.
As Joseph explains it, as far as he knows, according to his knowledge and his great age with regard to how long he's been in the spiritual realms, and age is a relative term, of course, according to his great experience, I should say, we're the only ones that have taken this particular trip. We're the only ones that have cut ourselves off from divinity consciously, not subconsciously, not at core. We're the only ones who have forgotten who we are. And in other spheres of experience in a physical universe, souls, spirits, angels, for that's what we are, actually move through those spheres to gain experience from them in full knowledge that they may be in physicality, but they are also spiritual beings. In full knowledge that when they have gained all the experience that they can from moving through a particular sphere, by that I mean a particular planet, then they go back to the spiritual realm, the angelic realm, and then they decide what other worlds to visit in order to gain more experience, to bring more experience to and elevate the divine, to elevate everything, because we are all linked together, of course, all part of the same thing.
Right. Right. Well, there seems to be a lot of people now. I mean, maybe it's not as unusual as I think, but it just seems to me that there's a lot of people that are tired and literally want to go home. You see how many people are just dying just suddenly. Do you think that the more enlightened you are, the more you really want to go home?
I think the more enlightened you are, the more alienated you feel living in this world. I think you find that you become more and more out of step on a physical level with the way that other people choose to live. And that's not a judgment on your part. It's simply that you see things from core in a different way than other people do. And it alienates you because you see that the trends of society are not for you. The way that most people live is not for you. You have a knowledge there that begins to pull at you, and you want that way of life. I think people are getting tired, and the reason they're getting tired is that the world, as we've said in many shows, is living within a field of human consciousness. And that field of human consciousness is, and has been for millennia, set to negative. And so we are drawing, rather than drawing on God power from within our hearts, from within our cores, we are drawing from this finite amount of negative energy. And, if you pour water into a bowl, and then you take the water out with a teaspoon, eventually that water has gone.
Right.
You've drawn out of that well of water all the water that's there. And that's what's happening at the moment, because we are not replacing field energy with God energy. If we were all to, if every human being around this globe were to sit tonight and to transmit light into the field, and was to let go of their negative tendencies, let go of their violent tendencies, let go of their need to judge, let go of their lust for power, this world would change instantly.
Right.
And tomorrow morning we'd wake up and we wouldn't be tired. Nor would we, those of us who are spiritually seeking, nor would we find this place such an awful place, because we would have changed it. We would have changed it back into what it originally was. And it's that simple, and it's that difficult. It's that simple because that's the only way to change things here. And it's that difficult because not many people believe in it.
Right, exactly. Well, it is what it is. Listen, what you're talking about are things that I've known since I was a child. That I just knew, I think I was like 4 or 5, that this isn't the way we're supposed to be living. And interesting, your choice of words earlier, because I had another epiphany on my 30th birthday, where the first thing I said when I woke up was, where's my life? I said, I've lived the first 30 years of my life for everybody else. And I actually said out loud, from now on, I'm not doing anything I don't want to do.
Yes.
And it's obviously the same way when you're not in a body. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do. And I think that a lot of the system here has people convinced that they have to do things they don't want to do.
Yes, we're serving the field, aren't we? We are set to serve the field. We're set to serve. From the moment we go to school, we are taught to be a good little part of society. Mm-hmm. We're not taught to question society. We are taught to conform to society. We are taught to respect certain societal norms, in that we are taught that we are going to get sick and we will need doctors. We are taught that we're going to get old and we will need care. We're taught that we, through society, have to work to attain a certain level of power and a certain level of finances. And we buy into all this. We've no choice. We're taken as children and programmed to react to the field in exactly the way the field wants us to react to it. In other words, to be dependent on it. There's nothing in many of our schools that addresses our spirituality. I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about spirituality.
Right.
There's nothing that acknowledges that we are greater than the thin layer of society that we've placed around this globe. There's nothing that acknowledges that we are creative beings. And there's nothing that acknowledges quiet. We live opposite a school, and the noise is deafening. Mm. And the children are not given any opportunity to be peaceful, to be silent. They are not taught that in silence there is great spiritual power. Right. There is just noise, there is just activity, there is just speed, and I see those poor children being prepared for another life that fits in with the wishes of the field.
Right.
We have to be brave, don't we? If we're bringing up our children, we have to be brave enough to make choices for them, to allow them to explore alternatives.
Absolutely.
To explore an alternative way of living, to be okay with the concept that they are more than they appear to be. And we don't do that. We just tend to fit in. Mm. And if we're ever going to change things, we have to stop fitting in materially, physically, and we have to start fitting in spiritually. Right. And when we connect with our true spiritual selves, we find that we're not fitting in according to a dictate. We're fitting in because that's what we are. Mm. That's the only thing that can bring us bliss. That's the only thing that can bring us enlightenment and a way forward. Right. And all these things are waiting for us, but we've got to take that time and we've got to address society and ourselves from a different viewpoint.
Well, absolutely. You know, I was, when you're talking about the school across the street from you, how weird, I have a school right down the street from me. I gotta tell you, I hate the sound of the buses going by. But when I was teaching, many years ago, when I was teaching a program here in Arizona on which all the children, all the schools had to go to as part of a field trip, which was basically had to learn about the desert so kids could survive. You know, they had different things, the plants, the animals, this, that. I taught the history of the Hohokam, the natives that lived here. So you got all ages coming through this center. You never knew which class was coming in next. But what I did notice after doing that, I probably did that for maybe a year or two, I don't even remember. By the 4th grade, the children were duplicates of their parents in every way. So the indoctrination was complete by the 4th grade, where children are usually 9 years old. When I had the younger kids in my section, they were fantastic. Their imaginations were wide open. Their curiosity was wide open. Their spirituality was wide open. But what I noticed was by the 4th grade, they were like little clones of society.
They've been beaten out of them, yes.
It was very sad. I mean, I really enjoyed the 2nd graders, but man, when they said the 4th graders were coming, I was wishing I was home.
Yes. And of course, there's a tendency, if children are spiritually aware, if they quite naturally see spirit people and hear spirit people, to say, don't be silly, that's your imagination. Right. Or don't be silly, people will think you're strange. And instead of nurturing and helping to develop that facility and that gift that can therefore help mankind, it's taken out of them. They're told that it's not proper. They shouldn't do that. It's only their imagination. And in many cases, that facility then closes down. And as it closes down, they then believe that it was indeed their imagination, and they shouldn't investigate that aspect of their personality because it's childish,
Right.
and it dies. And so many opportunities to bring through communication from higher spheres are snuffed out by the fact that we tell our children not to see people, not to sense spiritual aspects of life, not to have visions, not to talk to people that they can see but others can't.
Right.
And that's very sad as well.
Of course, they tell them that that's crazy, that's lunacy.
Yes.
So they put you down from the minute you start actually seeing reality. And
Yes.
I've been there, believe me, I've been there many times.
Yeah.
When you go to, I was re-looking through From Here to Infinity, and I was on a radio show out of the UK about a month or so ago, Michael. And
Right.
the host said to me, what do you say to people who tell you that your show is just preaching to the choir? And I think I surprised him with my answer because I said, I'm only interested in the choir. I said, my show is a safe space for my soul group. It's a safe space for people who think like me. They need to know there's safety. There is somebody out there speaking for them. And I recall in From Here to Infinity where you talk about the importance of circles of like-minded people, which of course struck me since I teach the medicine wheel, which is a circle within a circle. So, people out there feel all alone, but they're never alone.
They're never alone, but
Go ahead. Yeah, well, that was the other part, because I think this was probably in the same chapter where, no one's ever alone. But the importance of circles of like-minded people, I'm sure you feel the same way. I mean, I don't want to be attacked by people that are totally closed down and programmed and you're not going to change it. I want to give safety and information to people who actually are open and want it.
yes, and it looks as though we're being elitist, and we're not. You can only put across this information to people who are ready to receive it.
Right.
You could transmit it all day to a person who is not ready to receive it and put forward the perfect argument for spirituality and the perfect argument for us being spiritual beings who never die and move on into increasingly beautiful spheres of creation and being, and they would not see that information. They would not accept that information. The way to bring the information to the whole world is to first of all link to as many people as possible who are doing the same thing, is to acknowledge through those people, through that group of souls, what you intend to do. And as you lift those people up and lift yourself up, you create more light, you create a situation in which the people who were not ready for the information begin to accept the information, begin to at least examine the information. Mm-hmm. We can't elevate a single person without elevating everybody else because we're all linked. We're all part of the same thing. But
Right.
you have to address that part of the same thing that is ready to acknowledge the light.
Right.
And in acknowledging the light, those people transmit enough light to bring up the people who formerly have not been ready for the information.
Well said. While you were saying that, it brought me in my mind. You know how my mind jumps around in crazy places, Michael. Years ago, there were a lot of places in town. I'm sure it still happens around the country, or maybe even where you are, where you would hold psychic fairs.
Yes,
You might
indeed.
have 10 tables of, fairly new psychics, whatever, trying to get their feet wet, whatever. Maybe 20, $25, you get a little 10-minute read, you're on your way. And somebody had said to me, what did I think of that? Because they were kind of putting it down. And I said to them, first of all, back in the day, I did that for fun, but I got a lot of money to do it because I only did it through top resorts. But I said, for a lot of people, those little psychic fairs is their first introduction to anything spiritual.
Yes.
So whether those psychics were the best or the worst, I said they're opening a door for people, because people will go to something like that for fun. They'll think it's fun or curiosity or whatever, but a lot of those people will eventually find your books, Michael. They will eventually work with somebody like me. But they have to start somewhere. And what you're saying, what you just said, reminded me of that for whatever reason.
Yeah, there has to be that chink. There has to be that point at which there is that soul change and somebody examines the possibility. And they may have a reading with someone, as you've said. There might be 2 or 3 words within that reading that really shock them to their core.
Right.
And really convince them that there is something else going on other than what they can sense with their physical senses. And in that sense, as you say quite rightly, it's a beginning, it's a start point.
Right.
It's an opening up on the journey that leads to greater and greater spiritual awareness. Mm-hmm. It's unfortunate that that's perhaps the only venue that they've got at the moment to investigate initially
Right.
whether there is anything other than physical life, than physical existence, because we don't acknowledge our spiritual workers in the same way that we acknowledge the workers in our established religions. Mm-hmm. We elevate many of the workers in our established religions, and we look to them for the spiritual way, but that doesn't happen with spiritual workers very often, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. And yet spiritual workers work every bit as hard,
right.
if not harder, than many of the established representatives of many of the established religions.
Right, and I think they care about people more as well. Let's not leave that out. But I do want to get a little codicil to my listeners. If any of you out there are thinking of checking out a psychic fair, and you sit across a woman who tells you her dog is giving her the information, you probably want to go to a different table.
Yes.
Michael, believe it or not, there was this old lady in the valley, and she had this little tiny black poodle, and she said it was her dog doing the readings, and I was like, oh my God. But so kind of use a little discretion while you're out there. If they tell you, you got a curse on your head, and for a couple of $1,000 they'll take it off, get away from them. Or go watch the video on my site on how to detect a psychic fraud. That's on the page with, that was one, everybody loved that lecture. I must have given that lecture 1,000 times, Michael. So go to the consultation page, the video's there. So you have to be careful, but when you think about it, they usually have a table with crystals. They'll usually have a table with a lot of spiritual books. And for a lot of people, that's their first introduction to crystals. So, there is a purpose for everything, and there's different levels. You can't come across people talking about the things we're talking about in the same manner as one of these born-again Christians that nobody wants to be cornered with, especially if they're drinking and they're going to ram that religion down your throat. So you have to, it's not so much what you say, but how you say it.
Yes, and if anybody's going to a psychic fair, or it's their first taste of anything that is above their normal life, as they see it, they should wait to feel the pull. If they can't decide who to go to, wait to feel the pull. Wait to see a person that interests them for some reason, that they feel drawn towards. Mm-hmm. And then, as you say, be discerning. There's a lot of nonsense, unfortunately, in the area in which we work.
Oh, yeah.
Because it allows nonsense because it's nebulous. It can't be measured on a physical scale. And so they have to be discerning. And it can be a minefield, as we both know, because in the early stages of seeking spirituality, because you want to seek spirituality, and you think that the people that you're looking at are all experts, you can swallow the most extraordinary stories.
Right.
Again, this is why also in tandem with seeking outwards spiritually, you have to seek inwards.
Absolutely.
You have to learn meditation, that ugly word for many people because they think it's so complicated when it's not. And through meditation, you have to think, what I'm being told, does that connect with what I feel inside? Is this the right story? Is this the wrong story? Is this a truth for me? Or is this just nonsense? And they have to learn to be discerning as part of their spiritual journey.
Absolutely. Michael, we have to take a short break. Stay with us. Michael and I will be right back. Hi, Meria here, and I have a message. Due to the pressure of the times we're living in, I'm calling on all students and millennials to get the education they need to fight the fascism taking over our world. I've made a special subscription offer for students and for seniors on a limited budget. For just $9.99 a month, you can subscribe and get that education. Over 500 hours of real education that's necessary to understand the world, the problems, and the solutions. Remember, knowledge is power. Together you can change the world, but to do so, you must be informed of what's really going on and have real facts to support you in your endeavors. It's time for all the grandmothers to take a stand and teach the younger generation what their life could be and how to get there. Help me help you. One person cannot do it alone, and the guidance you seek is right here at www.meria.net, Meria.net. Your generation is the generation we've been waiting for, so let me help you. Thanks for listening. Hi, this is Maria Heller. If you're enjoying this show, please consider listening to the rest of it, along with hundreds of other hours of education, by a small subscription on my site. Get over to Meria.net, Meria.net. You are the only thing that supports this show. There's no corporate control, and there's plenty of education on site. So please consider either a subscription or a donation to keep the work going. There are too many alternative voices out there that are being silenced because of lack of support. So if you don't want MSM to be the only mind-controlling news out there, please consider supporting the people that support you and help us all save something for the future for our children. Thank you so much.